welcome to a Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brownhead, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, that's CK80, that's SIDKID80, SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please download that iHeartRadio app because we are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. We're at War on Anchor on all podcast platforms. And follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. Lakina, let's not waste any time. We have our one of our favorites here on guests join us here on Second City Sports, breaking down the NFL, the big game, and more.
All right, he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and All-American, college football All-American over at UCLA, and a longtime analyst for CBS Sports Network. He is the one, the only, the very smart Mr. Randy Cross. Randy, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. We got one more week of football and then a whole bunch more weeks to miss it.
Exactly. It does kind of feel that. It does kind of feel that way too. So yeah. So both the Chiefs and the Eagles are in Glendale, Arizona as we speak. They both landed there yesterday. So what are your early synopsis for this game? Because it seems like a very kind of even matchup.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it's kind of an interesting route for both these teams. I think everybody on the AFC side, even no matter who you were rooting for, you had to look at it and go, well, it's going to be either Buffalo or Kansas City. NFC wise, there's probably 3 or 4 teams that could have been. The Niners got really, really hot, which I kind of enjoyed watching them do that. And then, Philly defensively specifically, just were dominant in that NFC Championship game. Took out the Niners quarterback, and that kind of put that game away early. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see how they deal with Patrick Mahomes. But if you're an Eagles fan, I'd feel pretty good because it's not going to take much to revisit, let's say, that high ankle sprain that Patrick Mahomes has.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Patrick Mahomes. We saw him in very limited mobility last week in the championship game against Cincinnati. Of course, he has a week between that game and the big game this coming Sunday. What do you expect for Mr. Mahomes? Do you think that Andy Reid will test him out to see a little bit more of a play action or bootleg, or do you expect them to stick perhaps with the same game plan as far from the AFC title game?
Well, he rested a whole lot, I'm sure, last week. And you won't see him out, dancing in the clubs much during the week in Arizona, I'm sure. He'll be resting big time with a boot or whatnot. A lot of the same is what I'm expecting. I thought what Philadelphia did really well, to use kind of a common cliche football-wise, they didn't take any of the cheese. The Niners gave him a lot of motion. They gave him a lot of formation. They gave him a lot of different looks. And, guys like Hassan Reddick on the outside did a beautiful job of just cutting through the fluff and concentrating on his key, concentrating on his job, and not seeing, that was Debo just went by him, or that was McCaffrey that just went by him, just concentrating on what he has in front of him. And the challenge will be very similar for the whole Philly defense with Andy Reid's offense at Kansas City, because Mahomes does so many different things. He'll be able to do a lot of them. I don't think he's going to be too terribly limited. He won't let himself be limited, probably.
Right.
But they've got the tools and they've got the ability. I mean, that offensive line's decent. Pacheco's a nice option running the ball. So yeah, I think Mahomes, it's not just all about him. I think that might have been the big drawback when people were getting ready for that AFC Championship game. You know, they thought it was Mahomes and Burrow. Well, I mean, those are two really important guys, but we found out pretty fast that there's a lot more players on that Kansas City team that are pretty vital to them winning.
Absolutely. And let's talk about Jalen Hurts, Philly's quarterback, for a second. This will probably be like the first big like game he'll play. I mean, you know, he was kind of like the sideline guy for when Tua led Alabama to the college football playoff championship a few years ago. Of course, didn't get a chance, to play for the championship when he was at Oklahoma. So, do you kind of feel like he has a chip on his shoulder?
A little bit. You know, it's you got to be honest. If you're a sports fan, that was probably one of the more unusual benchings you'll ever see. A national championship game after a half that he wasn't necessarily bad. It just, Nick had a feeling, and he comes out, Tua goes in, and everything went great. Didn't hold him back. He went to Oklahoma. He played extremely well. So, yeah, I think he's got more of a chip, as most guys do, that he wasn't a top 5 pick, that he was a guy that lasted. He was one of those guys that, if you're looking at the room at the draft, they're sitting around and they're sitting around and they're sitting around. It can get kind of embarrassing, I think, at times for some of those guys. But I'd say that's the chip on his shoulder, is the fact that he wasn't that highly thought of.
Hanging out with our guy Randy Cross. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and CBS Sports Network college football analyst. He's hanging out with us right here on Second City Sports, live and in living color on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lick in here with you. Randy, let's go back to the Kansas City side and Andy Reid. Of course, many people consider arguably Bill Belichick, the head coach of the Patriots, to be the greatest coach of all time, and Vince Lombardi in there as well. I know Andy Reid got his first Super Bowl a couple years ago over San Francisco, but given the result coming up on Sunday, do you think that he's in their top 10, top 7 group of greatest coaches of all time, or do you think he's in that second tier?
Yeah, I mean, a top 10 is not exactly an insult when you look at the history of the game.
Right.
The toughest thing about the top 10 is sort of evaluating not the coaches, but who's putting the list together. Because if you don't pay close attention to historical type achievements and the guys that were there long before TV, you miss an awful lot. But, having said that, yeah, I mean, Andy Reid's going to be remembered as, he wins another championship at Kansas City. He's going to be remembered really, really well. I mean, really, and as well as he could. And he's a guy that's had, sort of a Greek tragedy career in a lot of ways, on the personal side with some of the terrible things that have happened in his life. But from a football standpoint and his imagination and his creativity, he's been as big an influence on the game as anybody.
These offenses are going to be very high powered, and I know some people have already said this could be probably one of the highest scoring games in the Super Bowl. So, is it really going to depend on which defense can slow down the other offense first? Is it going to be like one of those type of Super Bowls where whoever has the ball last wins, or what's sort of what do you see happening here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be. I mean, at this point, you could probably speculate as to anything happening, just about, or anything outside of 10-9. It's gonna be the type of a football game with those two quarterbacks, with those two offenses. I think it comes down to turnovers. I think it's, that's not exactly a stretch in football, but in these big games, it's amazing how often that one or two key turnovers, whether it's an interception or a fumble, just make all the difference in the world. And that, to me, is the thing that I would keep the closest eye on is, when the game starts, are they taking care of the ball? From a ball maintenance standpoint, all the way around, is the quarterback taking care of the ball? Is he tucking that thing and putting it away when he starts moving around? Because both these guys obviously have the ability to scooch around a little bit. But I think it's going to be a game that'll be in the medium score or so, a little higher score than the NFC. I think it's going to be somewhere in that 33 to 24, 33-27, somewhere in that range. So yeah, that's by Super Bowl definition, that's a really high scoring game.
Of course, Randy, back in your playing days, the media day was Tuesday during the players off day. Now is moved to Mondays for the last few years. What did head coach, the late Bill Walsh, prepare you guys to how to handle me? I know it's been a lot of things have changed, but did he prepare you guys on how to handle media day? And what was the worst question that was ever asked to you?
Well, Bill's advice for the media in general was, I guess, I don't know, how do you say it? The current NFL wouldn't be real crazy about it. He basically would have encouraged Marshawn Lynch to take his approach. Bill's whole thing was, you don't have to talk to the media. If you don't want to, don't. In fact, I'd prefer it if you didn't. Because I think he looked at being in the media a lot and talking a lot as something that just sort of upped the chances of overloading your lizard butt with your alligator mouth. And God knows, and especially in the Super Bowl, there have been a lot of instances of guys saying stupid stuff just because they kept them talking long enough. They said something dumb.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely a totally different time when you played. And so you got to think that, could nerves be a factor here? I know for most of the Chiefs, it's kind of like this is their second Super Bowl. I know there are a few guys, from the Eagles that are holdovers from when they won about 5 or 6 years ago. So do you think nerves will play a factor? Will it be experience, you think?
Well, I don't care if it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or whatever number it is for you. It's a Super Bowl, so it's a big deal. And if you're kind of a low heartbeat, low blood pressure guy anyway, they're going to get to you eventually. The questions and the incessant, stuff. It gets to be a very, very important occasion. Let's put it that way. And I think the Super Bowl, especially now, has gotten so huge. The media side of it has gotten so omnipresent that nerves and whatnot can be a factor, especially in the pregame routine and the halftime sequence, because you're totally thrown off. There's nothing about pregame and halftime that's like any other game you play during the year. It's completely different. I mean, completely. You don't play another game where at halftime you come in, you get your glass of water or whatever you're going to drink at halftime, you replace your electrolytes or whatever you're doing. Get retaped or something, go back in, look at the grease board, the whiteboard, and they're drawing out plays and doing all that. And normally when that's done, it's about enough time to say, all right, rah, go get them, whatever, bang, you're going out on the field. Not at the Super Bowl. At the Super Bowl, you get done with that and you're just laying around. There's a great shot in the 49er locker room from Super Bowl 19 of Bill Walsh leaning up against a bag of balls with his arms kind of behind his head like this, just kind of chilling. And we had no choice. You're sitting on your stools, you're sitting on the ground. It's so unusual. And the pregame can be really disconcerting because you have to kind of watch how chomped up and crazy you get early, because they don't let you loose until all the little special things that happen pregame happen.
We're hanging out with 3-time Super Bowl champ and current CBS Sports Network college football analyst Randy Cross right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakin here with you, Randy. Of course, one of the big storylines coming up this Sunday for the big game is the Kelce brothers, Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce, respectively for the Chiefs and Eagles. Talk to us about Travis Kelce. Perhaps he's the greatest tight end of his era. What makes him so special in your mind?
Well, he's obviously a perfect match for Patrick Mahomes and Mahomes' imagination and ability to find him. And also, you got to give Travis Kelce a little bit of credit too. He always finds a way to make himself available and does all the classic things that makes it easy for the quarterback to find him. I mean, it seems, oh, okay, get open. Seems like such a inane term. But, he presents his numbers. So if you're Patrick Mahomes, you'll actually look up, and I willing to bet you Mahomes a lot. He sees 8-7. He looks and all of a sudden he sees the numbers, bang, he throws it to it. I mean, it sounds dumb, but he knows how to present his numbers. He knows how to slide and get into those holes. He's extremely, extremely adept at doing that. I think he's going to be a real problem for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Absolutely. Now we'll get back to the Super Bowl in just a little bit, Randy, but I want to talk about, of course, the 49ers. Of course, Brock Purdy got hurt, in the middle of the NFC Championship game. That was kind of like it for them after that happened. Poor Josh Johnson, coming in, kind of, just like, hey, you're playing for the NFC Championship game, good luck and such. But, what do you think are going to be the answers here for the offseason? Trey Lance is still recovering from his injury. Brock Purdy is probably going to be out for a little bit. He's having Tommy John. What do you think? Who do you think is going to be the 49ers QB next season? Who do you think?
Well, I mean, when they start mini camps and all that, I believe it's got to be Trey Lance, and they'll have somebody else in there taking some reps. More than likely, that guy's name won't be Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo will be somewhere else as a free agent. But Purdy will be back by the time they get to preseason or so. So I'm very interested to see how they handle that dynamic based on how he did this year. But you just don't know how that elbow is going to react. In baseball, Tommy John surgery is a pretty big deal as far as the length of time it takes to rehab. Football's, obviously a completely different game, much more physical in a lot of different ways. But if he can come back in 6 months from that injury, I think it's pretty amazing. It's usually more like 9 to 12 months for a real. If you're a pitcher, it's going to take you at least that long. So I think that's how they handle it. They're going to have to sign another veteran, somebody to be around, somebody that knows their system, to be around Trey Lance. But they're going to keep coaching him the way they've been coaching him, and people forget he played pretty damn well when he played. He's had a little problem with injuries, but heck, he hasn't played but the last 4 years, maybe 20 games, maybe. So I mean, he's well rested physically. He's going to be just fine. But to answer your question, I would think by the time we got to the regular season, at least initially, it's going to be Brock Purdy.
Speaking of another quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, he threatened retirement last year, got his money for Green Bay, and now we see here almost in the same scenario in a sense. What do you see in the future of Aaron Rodgers? Do you think rumor has that he may go to Las Vegas Raiders to reunite with his old teammate Devontae Adams? Do you see that scenario happening, or do you think he finally call it quits?
I guess he could. I mean, like all good retired football players, he got himself a little crystal trophy last weekend. Or yesterday, I should say, out at the AT&T. He doesn't look. You forget. I mean, not this year, but the 2 years before that guy was an MVP. He hadn't gone away. His abilities have not fallen off. Not having Devontae Adams affected him. Having a bunch of young receivers that he didn't know affected him. But I would imagine he is going to be back doing what he loves to do. And one of the things he really loves to do and takes a good, kind of morbid pleasure in is torturing the media.
and us too, I think, Randy. But of course, we're in Chicago. We gotta talk, some Bears here for a little bit. Now, of course, they got the #1 pick. They got more cap space than any team. What would you do if you were the Bears and that #1 pick? Do you trade it? Do you see like any absurd trade scenarios where they trade Justin Fields? So, what would you do if you were in the Bears spot?
Well, as you know, there's a difference, a large difference between having cap space and using cap space,
right?
Spending it. So that kind of remains to be seen. I like Justin Fields. Could he use some guys around him to help him in that offense? Yeah, probably. I think Chicago's got the bones of a pretty damn good offense. So do you trade and sort of give up on him and see who's next and who's going to be better? That is going to be better. I mean, do you know C.J. Stroud is a huge improvement over Justin Fields? And now his legs aren't. We know that. So no, I don't see them giving up on him. I think that would be a pretty classical dumb mistake to give up on him at this point.
We're heading down the home stretch in the last few moments here with Randy Cross right here on Second City Sports. We're live and live in color right here on Sports on Chicago. Sid McKinney here with you. Speaking of a future Hall of Famer quarterback, Tom Brady retired last week. Of course, if everything goes well, he's supposed to start his broadcasting career next year on Fox. He signed a 10-year, over $300 million deal. I'm assuming he's going to be part of the pregame coverage this Sunday. We wouldn't be shocked to say the least. But I wanted to ask you, Randy, when you retired, what was that transition period like from being a player to broadcaster? How long did it take, and what was some of the adjustments that you had to make going to the booth?
Well, it's not too bad, but in retrospect, I tell people all the time, you have to be kind of born to do this well. You can learn to do it pretty good, but you're kind of born to do that, have the personality that it takes, have the presentation that it takes, and then have the ability to speak in sound bites that people can understand and like. So it's a really tricky business. I had some great people around me when I was young in the business, because I went straight out of San Francisco and went right to CBS and was there 5 years, and then 4 years at NBC, and then back with CBS, and did NFL for 20 years. So it's been like a dozen years now that I've been on the college side. But there's a lot of little things from a TV standpoint that you've got to learn about, and much of it is the sequencing. There's not the hardest part about it, honestly, to make it sound kind of funny, but I mean, is how to speak in a really clear and presentable way while somebody's yelling in your ear. Because they will. The producer is going to talk to you. The director is going to say something. People are going to be in your ear making suggestions mid-thought in some cases. So yeah, that's kind of the hardest part about it. But it's like I said earlier, it's one of those things you're going to know really fast whether or not whoever goes into broadcasting, whether or not they can do it well, and it's going to be obvious fast.
Right. Well, with the NFL draft coming up in a few months here, and I know UCLA, of course, your alma mater, you got a couple of great prospects. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think could be a good find for somebody. Zach Charbonnet, I think, would be a good fit. Now, who do you think will have? I know it's hard to predict who will have the best career, but who do you think can kind of have that impact right away for whatever team drafts them?
Yeah, I DTR has got a chance of being good. He's got to learn, at some point to stop throwing those evangelist passes, because he can make 70,000 in the stadium stand up and scream Jesus. He'll throw some passes that you look at it and go, whoa, what was that? So if he can cut those down, but the NFL won't tolerate that. College kind of had to, because heck, he was really, really good, but he can't do what he did in college at the NFL level. You won't be there long. I'd say Zach Charbonnet. He's a running back that's got the speed, he's got the power. Somebody, and nobody drafts these guys real high these days because they wear out so fast. But somebody, and if he gets lucky enough to go to a dynamic style offense where he's one of like a couple of guys, and you look at the list of guys in the Super Bowl, I mean, in those offensive running backs in these offenses, you look at a guy like that in a dynamic offense, he's going to be dangerous. I mean, really dangerous. I like what he's got to offer a whole lot.
Last question from me, Randy. Of course, the 30 for 30 documentary of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens premiered last night, and they showed a couple of clips from you guys at CBS. You were doing a pregame show at the time. Of course, during your playing career, you faced some of the toughest defenses in Philadelphia, Chicago, the New York Giants, Washington, and Philadelphia. Of course, many people consider that Baltimore Ravens team arguably the best defense in NFL history. Which of those teams did I mention, or if it was one that I forgot, please remind me. But what was the toughest defense you faced in your playing days?
Well, the best defense we ever faced, in my opinion, was Ditka and Buddy Ryan's Chicago Bears in that sort of 83 to 88, kind of that 5-year window. They only won one championship. And I think a lot of that was because they didn't have a very well-rounded team. Their offense wasn't that dynamic. If they'd had a dynamic style offense to go with that defense, oof. And you look at that defense and all the guys that are in the Hall of Fame, it tells you how good that group really, really was. But yeah, Baltimore was that good. I mean, Baltimore was able to physically, whether it was Saragusa or Ray or Woodson they could physically take over a game. And that's highly unusual. You see it in college some, but when you're talking about adults competing against adults, you don't see it too often. And when you do, it stands out. And man, those guys stood out.
Probably the last great defense we'll probably ever see with the new rule changes and stuff. So, yeah, that's probably the last great defense there. Okay, Randy, hate to put you on the spot here, but who do you think wins either Super Bowl 57 and who do you think will win MVP?
Well, if I had to take a wild guess and just sort of going off sort of the results from the championship weekend or championship day, I would say Philly. And if Philly wins, the MVP is going to be Jalen Hurts. Their defense, I think, is good enough, physical enough, and a big play kind of a defense that they can contend with what Kansas City has to do. And I love what Andy Reid has built. I'm just not completely convinced that this isn't just Philly's year, hearkening back to the way they started the season and, then they arrested their quarterback for it seemed like about a month. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be Philly, and I think Philly's going to win by about a touchdown.
All right, that's been 3-time Super Bowl champion, current CBS Sports Network college football analyst Randy Cross, friend of the show, is joining us here on Second City Sports, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sir, thank you very much once again for joining us here today on the program. Great job, much continued success, and let's do this again, have some more fun conversations down the road, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks,
you.
Randy.
Right, thank you.
All right, now.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye. All right, Sid. As usual, so I got a towel off here. Great, great
Yes.
insight as always. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna talk some Bulls and NBA, including a trade. Oh, goody! I'm sure Sid will have something to say about the trade, and so will I too. But NBA talk coming up next. Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown. NBA talk coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver. And I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go? I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I got into it there. Welcome back to Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, I guess, Sydney. But Sid here had to, step away from a second. But hopefully we'll get him back on in a little bit here. All right, I think I see him coming on. We'll give him a minute to kind of set himself back up here. What's it? Sid, what's up?
Yeah, hello guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Welcome back to the program. I know we're supposed to talk NBA right now. Of course, there was a big trade that took place over the weekend. Kyrie Irving, of course, he requested a trade on our when we had our last show on Friday. He didn't get what he wanted from Brooklyn Nets management. And of course, they made his request come true. He was traded to the Dallas Mavericks for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, who goes back to the Nets for the second time in his career, and 3 future picks, including a 2029 first rounder and 2 future second rounders. Lakina, as we talked about all year long, I'm coming at it from the Dallas Mavericks side. Luka Doncic has a second banana that he can rely on, and he doesn't have to carry the heavy load. And this, if it's played right by head coach Jason Kidd, Luka Doncic doesn't have to bring out the ball a whole lot. He can just concentrate on offense, and he doesn't have to score as much. If Kyrie Irving stays well behaved, which I believe he will, this is going to help this Dallas Mavericks team. And those other role players will have their roles finally being set in, and they don't have to do as much as they did the previous last couple of seasons.
You have more faith in Kyrie than I am. I give this a month. When I saw that he was going to Dallas, I'm like, oh, no, I don't see it working. Because if Luka and Kristaps Porzingis couldn't make it work, what makes you think, Luka and Kyrie can make it work? I know you said he's ecstatic, but heck, yeah, he was ecstatic to go to Brooklyn, play with KD. Mm-hmm. Look what happened. So I'm like, I give it a month and such. I mean, look, will this, get the load off Luka? Sure, of course, but I just don't see it. I see disaster waiting to happen. And I feel like, kind of like prove me wrong, if you will. I mean, look, Spencer Dinwiddie, I know he was actually a good utility player from the Nets. So maybe that's the kind of guy that Kevin Durant, maybe need once he does come back. But unfortunately, it's going to be interesting though to see that if KD decides that he wants to trade. We still got a couple more days before the NBA trade deadline. So for me, it's all starting to kind of manifest. So I really feel like, yeah, this is something that's gonna. I'll believe it when I see it. I think that's kind of like that's my thing here.
Yeah, you have any questions or comments for us regarding the Kyrie Irving trade? You can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports on Chicago's Facebook page or Sports on Chicago's YouTube page. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakina will get that up on the screen for you. Lakina, I think like you said, give it a month. We'll see, but I'll take the high road for this one. He'll be on his base behavior because he's looking for that long-term money. He knows that this is his last best chance to get there because I believe he's in his early 30s now. So, and he still has the best ball handling skills in the league. And so he's going to be on his best behavior to get that money at season's end. And looking at the landscape of the Western Conference, we talked about this, like, on the last few shows, that the middle of that Western Conference is bunched up right now. After Denver and after Sacramento, I know they lost a bad one last night. We'll get to that in just a moment. But after those couple of teams, it's bunched up with Dallas, the Clippers, perhaps the Lakers. I know we'll get to them in just a second. It's all bunched up, and one good winning streak by either of those 3, 4, 5 teams can catapult you to the top 4 spot and perhaps home court advantage throughout the first round, perhaps the first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Like I said, I mean, we'll wait and see. I mean, look, I think it'll probably be a honeymoon period between Luka and Kyrie. So maybe this will definitely help them kind of get away from the pack and be in that top tier. But we'll have to see what happens. So, but speaking of, the Bulls had a nice showing over the weekend. They got the best of Dame Dollar and the Wizards, 129-121 in a high scoring affair. There is because the game of the day before on Friday, and we'll get to that in a second, but the Blazers actually overcame an 18-point deficit to top the Wizards. But the same thing happened, kind of a little reverse karma here. The Blazers scored 43 points in the second quarter. They were up, I think, about 15 or something like that. But the Bulls are to kind of tighten up on the interior D, and they outscored the Blazers 33-17 in the third quarter. And of course, they were able to kind of pull away from them and hold them off. Zach LaVine had 36 points, I should say, in that winning effort. And I think Zach felt like, well, look, if you ask him after going to back-to-back All-Star games, he's not going. We'll see. Maybe the injury situation, maybe he'll sneak in there. But I think he felt like he kind of had that chip on his shoulder. That's why he had probably his best performance in about a week with the 36 points. Vooch had a double-double with 23 and 11 and 4 assists. DeMar added with 27. Io had 13. So a nice, solid team effort. Kobe White had 10 off the bench. So a nice, solid team win. Of course, P. Will, he only scored 7, but he made a couple of a big defensive stops with a block and a steal late to kind of keep put the game away for the Bulls. So look, I mean, these kind of games the Bulls will lost about a month ago. So the fact that they actually won against a pretty good Trailblazers team, of course, we know Dame had a couple of buzzer beaters. So, what do you think about that game on Saturday?
One, I want to focus in on the Bulls bench, in particular Kobe White. I know he had 10 points on last Saturday night, but he's been playing very well these last 3 or 4 games, scoring-wise, coming off the bench. And head coach Billy Donovan giving him more playing time. And also, too, Kobe White getting more confident within his shot because early in the season, he didn't have it. I know he was injured a little bit off and on too early in the year as well, but he's starting to gain his confidence. His shots are starting to go down. Even though the Bulls do not have a pure shooter on this roster, Kobe White is the closest thing that we have as far as a shooter is concerned. I know Zach LaVine jacks up a lot of long distance shots as well, but Kobe White is starting to gain confidence coming off that bench. And Andre Drummond, too, we talked about it last Friday, Lakina. He turned back the clock in that victory against the Charlotte Hornets last Wednesday. I know the production dropped off a little bit, but he was still effective with 7 points and 5 rebounds last Saturday against Portland. So I'm really encouraged at how this Bulls bench is finally starting to contribute right now. And Bill Donovan is trusting the guys whoever's the most consistent coming off the bench, they get the most playing time. And that's the way it should be.
And that's, like you said, that's how it should be, especially if you're trying to if the bench, luckily the Stars actually had a solid showing, and of course the bench guys kind of able to add into it. So I think that definitely helps. They were able to give Zach credit. I mean, yeah, he was able to match Dame, shot for shot, points for points, and he actually made some has actually made some key stops. I mean, I think he made Dame try to shoot a bad 3-pointer that would have actually cut the deficit. I think like 2 or 3, but he was able to make that stop and cause Dame to miss it. And of course, the Bulls were able to hold off. So they play the Spurs tonight. So a little bit of a gig back there. I'm sure the Bulls will want, so they can have a chance to get like itching closer and closer to 500. So we'll see what happens. It should be. Look, these next couple of games, I think it's gonna be these next few games before the All-Star break is gonna be very telling. If they can win by 4 of their next 5 before the All-Star break, I think they can kind of get back into that will be kind of like right there, sort of get to that top 6 seed in the East.
And should that happen before next week's All-Star break, Lakina, if the Bulls go 4-1 in their next 5 games, as you said, does that give the Bulls management, for the lack of a better term, ease of not being pressured to make a major move? Because some people say they still should trade Nikolai Vucevic because he's a free agent this summer. Some people say you should trade Zach LaVine. I don't know, outside the Lakers, who's going to pick up that contract. And some people say you should trade DeMar DeRozan. He's a free agent next summer. So regardless of how the Bulls do, Lakina, assuming they go win the majority of the games between now and next Thursday's break, do you think that this Bulls management will make a move? If I believe if they make a move, it'll be a minor move, but they're not going to overhaul this roster. And I think in many people's minds, if they get to 500 or slightly above 500 by this time next week, I think the Bulls management will stay packed for sure, because they can always say to themselves, well, we finally turned the corner. We finally over 500. We're not as bad as you guys thought because of the injuries and other things that are going on around the team during the first couple months of the year. We finally hit our stride. The Eastern Conference after Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Boston is wide open. So we have our chances. And you have to look at this other scenario too. We haven't talked about it yet, but Lonzo Ball, and I know head coach Billy Donovan said about a week ago that he's nowhere near coming back. If you're the Bulls management now, I hate to say it, but you're not going to count on Lonzo Ball this year. If he has to progress where you thought he was, and he still having problems with his surgical repair right knee, he's not going to play this year. So you have to be in the mindset that he's not going to help you, unfortunately, this year. You cannot depend on him to come back.
It's sort of one of those things where I'm seeing, I've heard all the comments from certain people. There was actually a report that claimed that they were trying to get Kyrie, which I don't believe that. I didn't believe it either. Yeah, that was one of those concession stand where it was like somebody probably heard somebody say, wouldn't Kyrie look great in the Bulls uniform? And someone ran with it. So I think that's what happened there. But yeah, I mean, look, I think they'll make a minor. I think they'll try to get like a mid-level guy to come off the bench, and so that they don't have to give up a lot. Maybe like a second rounder, and that's it. So I think that's probably what they're going to do. Look, we never know what goes on in AK's mind, which is a good thing. I don't need to know what they're doing. Like our buddy Big Dave Watson said from CHGO Bulls, let them cook. And I trust them. Look, I think they're gonna make a move, and I think it won't be the move that people want. That's why you guys are not in the working the front office. But I digress. Play with your trade machines. Go have at it. But I don't think that's not gonna happen. So I think I'm like you. I think they'll probably get a minor move, make it, like I said, get a utility guy, extra guy off the bench, and that's it. They're not going to make any big moves. So sorry, Bulls fans, who are your so-called experts. So you listen to Second City Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown with you now.
Not that trade machine, according to Lakina.
Okay, yeah, I'll say the trade machine. Oh God, probably one of the worst inventions ever. My goodness, so you got to agree with me on that, Sid. But yeah. But going into some of these games from over the weekend, going into yesterday's games, a couple of kind of surprises. We'll start with, like you said, the Sacramento, New Orleans. I don't think anybody saw this score happening. Not what you want. 136-104. The Pelicans beat the Kings. The Pelicans are kind of starting to turn the corner a little bit. You got Brandon Ingram back, so you got to think that that's kind of like we're starting to see maybe we are kind of see the Pelicans turn the corner here. But yeah, not a good loss for the Kings.
Yeah, it's Sacramento struggling right now to stop people. I know that they did a good job of that early on in the season, but they kind of hitting the rough patch right now as we are nearing the All-Star break. I still believe that this is a good team, and I think they're going to be in the dogfight to stay out of that play-in tournament. Of course, you have Harrison Barnes, Domantas Sabonis, and borderline All-Star De'Aaron Fox leading that charge. So give head coach Mike Brown credit. As I said a million times, I'll say it a million more. He should be up there for a coach of the year. So I think Sacramento right now is hitting a rough patch, but I don't see them taking a free fall. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't see it. On the flip side, for New Orleans, they had they were at home for back-to-back games. They beat the Lakers on Saturday night. We'll get to that game in just a moment. But like you said, Brandon Ingram returning has made a huge difference. It takes the pressure off of C.J. McCollum. Jose Alvarado, I know Matt Pack from CHEO hates that guy for what he did to the Bulls around this time last year, but he's been making a difference as well. So, and they have a couple other injuries to a couple of their key role players as well. But head coach Willie Green has those guys believing in each other, and Brandon Ingram, as you mentioned, has made a huge difference. So New Orleans has struggled since Zion Williamson went down with a hamstring injury about a month or so ago. But it's time for them to turn things around. They played without Zion last year. Of course, it's better when you have him, but they played without him before. They got outmatched in some games, but hopefully it's finally starts to see some good signs for them for things to come.
Absolutely. And saying the Western Conference, Minnesota got a nice win over the Nuggets by 30, 128-98, I should say. So I know Jokic didn't play for the Nuggets, so I think that's probably played a difference also too. I don't think Murray played either, so that might have played a little bit of part. Yeah, so none of the stars just so like that might have played a part as to why the T-Wolves were able to kind of. I know Nuggets fans are probably like, okay, let's not read too much into it because a lot of our guys didn't play, but even still, I mean, look, the T-Wolves did what you're supposed to when a lot of the stars from those opposite side is out, so they did what they had to do. So a nice win, for them. An interesting game here. Toronto beat Memphis 106-103. Some weird stuff is happening between Memphis and the Pacers. We'll get to that in a second. Pascal Siakam had 19 points going back to the All-Star game. Mr. Siakam is also too. But I want to get to this game real quick. The Knicks and Philly. Philly had a big lead. Now this game came before the Bullies of Baltimore. Doc, it's the third time that the Sixers have blown a 20-point lead under Doc Rivers. 2 of those 3 losses have come in the last week. And they were up by 21 against the Knicks. Of course, the Knicks were able to come back and such. So a little bit of a rough patch too, or is there something like really kind of like wrong here with the Sixers?
Hopefully this doesn't become a trend for Philadelphia. I know they've been dealing with a lot in terms of injuries, especially from the first part of the season with Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, who both of those guys are not been back for a while now. But the Knicks finally decided to step up in the last few moments last night. Julius Randle had 24 points, 9 rebounds. And, of course, Jalen Brunson, who, in my opinion, should have been an all-star, he added 21. The Knicks finally made some key plays and big buckets down the stretch, unlike on Saturday night, which they lost to the Clippers in overtime, which they came up empty at the end. So the Knicks had a turnaround. They learned their lesson from the loss last Saturday against the Clippers, and they executed down the stretch last night against Philly, against their rival.
Yeah, that's interesting too. So we'll see, but interesting result nonetheless. The Cavs beat the Pacers 122-103. Darius Garland had 24 points for the Cavs in a pretty interesting game there between the Battle of the Young Guns. They're going back to Saturday's game. Of course, we got to talk about this. Golden State beat Dallas 119-113. Steph had 21, but he had to leave the game, due to a lower left leg injury. So it looks like he's going to be gone for a while. I'm not going to go into the whole scientific stuff, but let's just say he's going to be gone for a little bit. I'm not going to, it's a little bit too scientific for me. We're not doctors here, but they got a nice win against Luka. I know Luka didn't play, of course. He was nursing that heel injury, but they did the Warriors just have to win that game. But that Steph injury long term could be a problem, especially if he's going to be gone. So it looks like he's going to be gone to after the All-Star break. It looks like.
Yeah, so for the time being, it's all up to Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, and whoever decides to step up after coming off the bench for the Warriors. They experienced this turbulence before early in the season when Steph Curry was out the first time due to various injuries. It looks like they're going to have to do it again, but for how long, we don't know. But it all starts off with the two veterans in Klay Thompson and Draymond Green.
Absolutely. So that's going to be a to be continued there. We'll see how the Warriors do now. Atlanta and Denver, of course. This is why Denver did not play their guys last night against the T-Wolves. Of course, second of a back-to-back. In this case, a road back-to-back. But they did beat Atlanta 128-108. Jamal Murray has season high 41 points. So I think that's kind of like the reasons why we didn't see Murray and Jokic and the rest of the starters did not play yesterday. Of course, Milwaukee, there's kind of starting to figure it out a little bit. 123-115 win over Miami. I know our girl Lana Tucker was not very pleased with this result. So, but Giannis had 35 points, and it looks like a lot of their utility guys are starting to kind of warm up a little.
Yeah, I watched some of that game live too. Chris Middleton looked good. Of course, Drew Holiday. Yeah, and Drew Holiday, who's going back to the All-Star game, I believe for the second time in his career, he came up with some big baskets down the stretch. But it all comes down to defense for the Miami Heat. They just couldn't stop Giannis when they had to. That man is a Greek freak for a reason.
Well, yeah, there's a reason why they've called it that he was noted that when he was 19. So, he's definitely shown that. Now, a game that we said that this will be a high-scoring game, and it was 153-121. OKC, no, that's not a typo, folks. OKC beat Houston. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a season-high 42 points. And it's interesting that there's been a lot of scoring going on in the NBA because for the third time this year, there were 5 games that featured both teams scoring 120 plus points in a single day. It also happened in the December 14th and January 25th, including last Saturday. So that's the first time that's happened. So if you like offense, this last Saturday was definitely for you.
Yeah, it's like playing your buddies on the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis or the original PlayStation back in the day. You had all your cheat codes, and you had the game not on simulation but on arcade. You had it on a hard level, and then you played against your buddies, and off you went. So that's what today's NBA reminds me of. Not to sound like that old guy, but we talked about it with Randy Cross regarding football. The rules have changed, and so it benefits the offense. The same here with the NBA, which we've been watching for the last several years. So for me, it should be a balance between defense and offense, but it looks like we're not going to get that anytime soon.
No, we're not. So 134-128 in overtime. The Clippers beat the Knicks. So there's another score there with that big, high.
Yeah, Nicholas Batum tied it to force it into overtime for the Clippers, and the Clippers took over for there. Great games for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Now both of them got to stay healthy, and the Clippers should be taking off like they're trying to do right now as they continue their East Coast road trip.
Consistency's got to be the key here for the Clippers at this point, especially. Now, another game that was a high-scoring game. The Pelicans beat the Lakers. I actually saw a little bit of this game on ESPN2. 131-126. Brendan Ingram, of course, speaking of that from a few minutes ago, 35 points, again, a season high for him. He's kind of started to get back into the swing of things. AD had 34 points. I think LeBron had 25. I don't know. 27. So he's about 35 now behind Kareem for the scoring list. So, but yeah, I mean, the Lakers had their shots, late. I know that they were up big in regulation. It was back and forth for a little bit. The Lakers actually came back and such, but they just couldn't get the shots that they needed to hold on to beat the Pelicans. But a nice win for the Pelicans, though.
Yeah, so I mentioned New Orleans had a very good weekend. And shout out to our good buddy Lamont Scott on our Facebook page. He says that New Orleans is his favorite Western Conference team.
Yes.
Hopefully you guys can get Zion Williamson back sometime after the All-Star break, and the team should take off. They did it when they were healthy early in the year. But back to that game on Saturday, I did get a chance to watch a lot of this game. The Lakers kept up with them score runs, but they just couldn't make the key defensive stops down the stretch, and they missed a few free throws as well. Anthony Davis is starting to look good, Lakina, but I don't want to be that dude, that negative Nancy, but you hope that he doesn't get hurt, because if he doesn't get hurt, he helps out LeBron James that much more, obviously. And LeBron James has had a phenomenal year so far. And how long can he keep going like this, scoring 30 points per game and leading the team in almost every category? And that's why the Lakers need to provide him with help come Thursday at the trade deadline. Will they do that? I doubt it, because the Lakers are right up against the cap. So the Lakers, they are what they are. They are 4 games out of 500. And actually, Russell Westbrook has been playing well this year. I know he's been struggling lately, but he's been playing well this year coming off the bench. And what you talking about the Bulls being at a crossroads at the trade deadline. So are the Lakers. I know they picked up, a.k.a. the Japanese Jordan player from Washington a couple of weeks ago for a couple of second-round picks. He's actually been playing pretty well. But outside of that, the Lakers need more. And I don't know if Rob Pelinka, their GM, is going to do anything between now and Thursday.
Yeah, apparently, I guess they had they offered 2 first rounders, and I forgot who else that they, for that trade for Kyrie. And I guess, Dallas had a better shot at it. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah, it's going to be something they're going to have to figure out now. The Nets edged out the Wizards 125-123. Cam Thomas had a career high 44 off the bench. So at least, today they were able to kind of, keep the Kyrie stuff away from him a little bit. So we'll see if they can kind of, especially with Dinwiddie being back. Like I said, he was actually a solid utility guy for them in the few years he played there. So we'll see if he can kind of, make a difference there. And we'll see if, I know the Durant rumors are probably going to be running rampant too. So, we'll see what happens. But a very interesting thing there. Now let's go through the Friday matchups real quick because we're up against, we got to do this week's games. But on Friday, Atlanta beat Utah 115-108. Speaking of high scoring games, the Sixers needed 137 points to beat the Spurs 137-125. Of course, Embiid, had 33 points in that cause there. But going up here, but Phoenix got a nice win against the Celtics on Friday, 106-94. So
yeah, they need some healthy bodies right now. I know Chris Paul, if you believe the reports that he's on the trading block, I don't buy it, but we'll see what happens with that squad.
Mikal Bridges had 25 points for the Suns leading the way there. So a nice win by them. Hopefully, Devin Booker can't come back fast enough. I'm going to keep saying that until he does come back. So
that's what I said. They need healthy bodies.
Yeah. Sacramento got a nice win against the Pacers. Of course, my thing went away for a minute there. Well, actually, it was a Pacers beat the Kings 107-104. Buddy Hield had 21 points in a losing effort there. But 3-point, he's already reached 203 pointers this season. Is a 5th player to reach that in at least 5 straight seasons, joining Steph and Clay and Harden and Dame. So Mr. Hill's now in good company, but unfortunately it's a losing effort because they lose to the Pacers.
I wanted to get to Lamont's question over here. I'll flash it up again for those of you watching on Roku and YouTube. He said, do you guys think that Brooklyn will make another move before Thursday? Unless they're trying to ship off Kevin Durant, I don't think so.
Me neither. I think unless, I know we haven't heard anything, him saying that he wants to trade. So unless, I know people already, Bulls fans already kind of dreamed of the scenario of let's get the KD in the Bulls uniform. So I'm like,
stop it, folks, stop it.
Please. Yeah, it ain't happening, folks. So y'all need to stop that. But I can't see it happening. Like you said, unless they're gonna do a trade for KD, that's not happening. So. Yeah, I think people need to kind of dream about that. So let's get right to the games because we're up against it. But tonight's games, Monday at 6:00, you got Boston and Detroit, Cleveland and Washington, and the first game of the NBA TV doubleheader. I know they were hoping that they wish they could have took this game out, but it is what it is. The Clippers continue their East Coast road trip against the Nets. Of course, the Spurs and the Bulls at 7:00.
Yeah, the Kings and the Rockets also at 7:00 as Sacramento trying to get back on track on their current road trip. At 8:00, we'll have Dallas at Utah. No, Kyrie Irving will not make his debut tonight, so you'll get Luka and the rest of the crew against Utah on the road there. At 9:00, we'll have Golden State hosting the Oklahoma City Thunder. Remember, no Steph Curry for the foreseeable future. And to wrap up the Monday night second half of the NBA TV doubleheader, at 9:00, we'll have Milwaukee at Portland. Giannis versus Dame Dollar.
Ooh, that should be a lot of fun. I'm going to definitely be tuning into that one. Tomorrow's games, Tuesday, you got the Knicks and the Magic. You got the first game of the TNT doubleheader, Phoenix and Brooklyn. Again, I'm sure they wish they could have flexed this game out. And Atlanta and New Orleans at 6:30.
Yeah, at 7 o'clock, we'll have the Bulls traveling to Memphis to take on the Grizzlies. Remember what happened there last year. If you're a Bulls fan, we won't get into that.
Ugh.
Tony Bradley. Shh. At 8 o'clock, we'll have Minnesota taking on the Denver Nuggets from the Mile High City at 8 o'clock. And of course, the second half of that TNT doubleheader tomorrow, Tuesday, will feature the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Los Angeles Lakers, as LeBron James will try to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to become the NBA's all-time career-leading scorer. And I believe that game will also be heard nationally on ESPN Radio.
Yep, you are correct, sir. So could we be seeing some history tomorrow night? Well, we'll
I
have to
say
wait
yes.
and see. I think so too. Yeah, of course. The stage is set. I know. Okay, see, the Lakers have had some battles this year, so this is gonna be a high-scoring affair, and I'm sure we're gonna be seeing more history with LeBron. So we'll be cheering for that tomorrow night. Wednesday, some pretty good games. You got Detroit and Cleveland at 6 o'clock. You got Charlotte and Washington at 6 o'clock. The first game of the ESPN doubleheader, they've already had like 5 of these already. If it seems like the Sixers and the Celtics at 6:30. Another good one here. You got Indiana and Miami at 6:30. They've also had some battles this year, and San Antonio and Toronto also at 6:30.
Continuing with the Wednesday night schedule, at 7 o'clock, we'll have Sacramento at Houston as the Kings continue their road trip. At 8 o'clock, we'll have the Timberwolves at the Jazz. And in the second half of that ESPN Wednesday night doubleheader will feature Kyrie Irving in his Dallas Mavericks debut against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Los Angeles Clippers. That's at 9 o'clock. And then wrapping up the Wednesday night schedule at 9 o'clock, we'll have Golden State without Steph Curry. They'll travel to Portland to take on the Blazers.
Should be an interesting one there with no Steph. Thursday's matchups, you got Denver and Orlando at 6, and you got Phoenix, and as they're finishing up their East Coast road trip at Atlanta at 6:30.
And the TNT Thursday night doubleheader looks like this. Yes, your Chicago Bulls will face the Brooklyn Nets, perhaps without KD, at 6:30. And then the second half of that TNT doubleheader on Thursday will feature Milwaukee at Los Angeles to take on the Lakers. Giannis Antetokounmpo against LeBron James. If LeBron James does not break the record tomorrow night, he'll break it here on Thursday. So you'll be watching history either way.
Regardless. So yeah, both games are going to be on TNT. So you'll have your shot to see perhaps maybe history in the making. We'll see what happens there. And that is your schedule for this week in the NBA. And hour number 1, we had a busy hour 1. Hour 2 is going to be even busier because we'll be talking some college hoops. We'll recap the Pro Bowl and NHL All-Star Game. I know some people were kind of like down on the on the flag football thing with the Pro Bowl. Also, too, a special edition of Old School TV Monday. It's a good stuff coming up this month with Black History Month. So, a lot to do still. Lakita McGee, Sydney Brown, Second Seed Sports on Sports Now Chicago. Hour number 2 coming up right after this.
No, I don't know. I'm scared. I mean, you're
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena McGee on the IG.
We have less than an hour left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV. All right, Lakina, let's kick off hour number 2 of this great program by discussing college basketball. We'll start off locally first. The final line, they lose a heartbreaker to the Iowa Hawkeyes by the score of 81-79. Mr. Perkins had a career high 32 points. He scored 25 of those in the second half. Matthew Meyer was the team leader for Illinois, scoring 21 points. I don't know if you caught the broadcast, Lakina. Jason Bernetti and Stephen Bartle, both Chicago guys, did a great job calling the game for Fox. But they threw up a statistic during the game, and it said that the final line were 11-0 when they shot 45% or better. They shot 49% for the game, and they lost. They out-hustled Iowa there in rebounding. They took care of the basketball, forced some turnovers, but Iowa just made some big shots down the stretch. They got to some loose balls down the stretch. And plus, number 3, 2 of the Illini's top 3 stars were in foul trouble. And that's how Iowa came out with the win. I think Illinois is still going to be okay, but Iowa just wanted them more down the stretch, and this was a bigger win for them.
Yeah, there was some stuff that went on between the fans. I guess the Orange Crush, said that that their tickets were kind of rescinded at the last minute and everything else. And Iowa saying, look, we're giving these to charity to other folks. So it's just like it was a little bit crazy. But on the court though, yeah, I mean Perkins, definitely his best showing. He was 8-11 for the field from the field. So look, I mean, Illini did everything right. It's just that Iowa, look, Perkins hit some big shots. It's a big shots. Later, of course, career high for him. Chris Murray, who is Keegan Murray's twin brother, had a nice.
Yeah, he has some big shots too.
He has some big shots late. So yeah, it was just look. Sometimes it happens. You can do everything right, but sometimes the team, the other team is just better than you that particular day. So look, it's a Big Ten, it's conference play. So what do you expect? Like I said, I'm not worried about Illinois. They'll be fine. They'll definitely finish. They just need to finish like the top 3 or 4 to get that double bye. I think they will do that if they could kind of keep consistent. So I'm not too worried about them. Now, probably one of the biggest. No, go ahead, Sid. I know you were going to finish up.
Just a couple other notes from the game as far as the Illini side of things. Jaden Epps has been playing very well for the Illini these last 3 games, and he was the third leading scorer for the Illini with 16 points. But the only thing that concerns me about Illinois right now, 2 players, Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon. Both those guys have been less than double-digit scoring these last couple of weeks. And Coleman Hawkins, I know he's shown his range over the last couple of years. Ever since that big 6 3-point game against Wisconsin, he's struggled shooting from 3-point range. And I know Stephen Bartle made the comment again on the telecast on Saturday that sometimes he lets little things get into his head. They're talking about referring to Coleman Hawkins. So he just needs to calm down. Have more confidence within his shot, within his game. I think Coleman Hawkins would be okay. Terrence Shannon, he needs to be more aggressive.
Those
take
need
the
to be
ball to the basket like he did early in the year.
Yeah,
If he
those two
can
need
do
to be
that, Illinois can go far.
those two need to be consistent if Illinois wants to go forward, especially in March term. That's what happened to them the last couple of years. So
Mhm.
you got to be consistent. So we'll see what happens with that. Now going into staying in the Big Ten, of course, Purdue and Indiana. Indiana upset Purdue. Or I guess if you can call it that. But I saw a little bit of this game. 79-74. Trace Jackson Davis had 25 points, and this is despite Zach Edey having 33 points leading all scores for Purdue. But this is actually their Indiana's first win over a number one team in a decade. So what's up, Brandon? How are you? I know you're doing fine. We already talked about the NBA, so you got to go back and listen to it on YouTube. But yeah, I mean, going back to this, I mean, look, I mean, they sort of recorded Assembly Hall, so yeah, it's fine. I know people were freaking out by it, but like I said, Indiana hasn't been a top 10, a number one ranked team, I should say, in like about a decade. So let's not, let them go crazy. A lot of those folks weren't even, a lot of those folks were like in middle school when that happened. So I think people.
Yeah, shout out to Mike Woods. As we said, Lakina, what he did last year was just a stepping stone for Indiana. They carried that momentum over to this season, and it's not a mistake of what they did on Saturday. Like I said, on the flip side for Purdue, they'll be fine. This is just a setback. They're still one of the top teams in the country. They're the number one team in the Big Ten. I think they'll be fine. You should be too much worried if you're a Purdue Boilermakers fan.
Absolutely. I was saying that the top 25. If you like defense, this was a game for you. Tennessee edge Auburn 46-43. Josiah Jordan James had 15 points leading the way for Tennessee. I think he was probably like maybe only one of the only like three players in double figures because it wasn't it was definitely a defensive struggle. It was actually the fourth. The 89 combined points is actually the fourth fewest between the ranked teams in the shot clock era. That started, of course, in the 85-86. Also, the lowest scoring game between ranked SEC teams since the AP poll era. You got all the way back to 1948, 1949. So, yeah. So,
the invention of basketball.
I know. Yeah. So, if you like points, this was not the game for you. It was a little tough to watch at times, but look, Tennessee did just enough to win that game.
Yeah, Tennessee's been one of those surprise teams the last couple of years, and like you said, we all like offense, but sometimes defense does get it done for you. We don't have the offense going for you, so defense gets you back into the game. If you do that, your offense will come around. So you still have to stop people at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Tennessee was able to do just that. Alabama pulled away from LSU 79-69. Arizona, no trouble with Oregon State. Tech got a nice little resume building when they upset in-state rival Virginia 74-68. Sean Padula had 22 points leading the way for all scores there. Like I said, a nice little resume building win for at home for Tech. Now, interesting game here in the Big 12. You got Texas and Kansas State. It was back and forth. But, Texas was able to kind of pull away and, pull it off 69-66. So Jabari Rice, I should say. Yeah, I can't get it. I never could get his name the last couple of years he's been there. But 14 points for him. A nice, well-balanced scoring. Keontae Johnson led all scores with 16 points in the losing effort. But Texas, they've been able to, they've been pulling it together pretty well lately. So, I mean, look, to say about the Hoops team, I know with all the turmoil going on with them, of course, losing, Chris Beard and, some silly way. I don't know if Ronnie Terry will get the job, but I think he'll definitely get his first look at it. And if they do well, they end up winning the Big 12 or the Big 12 tournament or they go far, he's going to make quite a case for him because he's been holding it together for them for the last couple of months.
Yeah, if let's just say they do beat Kansas in that Big 12 title game because Kansas is always there every year, he'll definitely get a huge bump in promotions. Going back to the Big Ten on Saturday, Lakina, Tyson Walker only had 12 points for Michigan State, but they come up 6 points short, losing to Rutgers 61-55. Lakina, I think it's time to start taking Rutgers seriously. They're the second best team in the Big Ten. And if you're Michigan State, you have to be worried just a little bit. Even though they're 14-9, they need to get on a roll here between now and conference tournament time here in Chicago in about 3 weeks or so. It's time for Tom Izzo and his crew to get it going. You can't. I think he's starting to run out of mulligans here.
Yeah, I think of the bracketologists. I think they have just out the outside, like in that last four in. So I think if you're Michigan State, you got to try to get those wins, those pivotal resume building wins to get in there. So we know that they got the talent to do it. Can they execute? I think that's always been kind of like the problem there now. Iowa State, I think this is like the first time, like about 10 or 12 years, they had swept the season series against Kansas, 53, I should say. Jaron Holmes had 15 points, leading the way for them. This is actually the first time they've been top 10 team in a bit. So they said, I mean, it's their fourth win over a top 10 team this year. That's their most in a single season since in the AP era. So a really solid showing for the Cyclones. Remember, they were right there, like they could have gotten to the Elite Eight last year. So the fact they've been able to kind of, they're 7-3, they're kind of right there in that top tier, the Big 12. So Kansas kind of went back to the bad habits, not making their shots, turnovers too. So they kind of fell back into those habits. They had 20 turnovers in that game against Iowa State. That's not going to do it for you.
Yeah, and with that many turnovers, it's not going to get it done. And I said it once, and I'll say it again. Who's going to be that second scorer to help out Jalen Wilson?
Consistency, I think that's sort of the key there too. He can only do so much by himself. So hopefully Kansas can figure it out. UCLA, no trouble with Washington State. Baylor pulled away from Texas Tech, and I would stay up to watch this one. St. Mary's got the best Gonzaga in an OT throw of 78-70, and Aiden Mahaney, if you learn the name, folks, he's probably one of the best guys in the West Coast Conference, of course, after Drew Timme, of course. He had 18 points leading the way for St. Mary's. He made some big shots late. St. Mary's made some big defensive stops late, and it was just too much for the Zags.
And the new chapter in this new era of the oldest rivalry on Tobacco Road between the Duke Blue Devils and the North Carolina Tar Heels. This took place in Cameron Indoor Stadium last Saturday night. Duke gets and John Shire they get by Hubert Davis's Tar Heels 63-57 rather. Jeremy Roach had 20 points for Duke, and Armando Babcock had 14 for the Tar Heels. Lakina, North Carolina, I'm not too much worried about them right now. I think they'll get it together, even though they're 15-8, but they got to pick it up offensively. They just couldn't knock the shots down when they mattered most. And Duke just had a little bit more than they did at the end. Looking down that Duke roster, is it the roster is going to scare you? No, but they still have talent, and they did just a little things down the stretch to pick up the victory at home.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of the ending of that. And yeah, they just Jeremy Roach, was one of the few holdovers from that last season's Final Four team. They were able to, pull it out. And look, I think they had the little shower afterwards. I think getting that first win over North Carolina, I think this is like the first time since I can remember that without no Coach K on the sidelines. I know he was there, but at Cameron. But that place was rocking. So look, I think give it about a year or two. I think John Shire will get that. Get the players that he played to that specification. So I'm not too worried about Duke either. So I think it'll be the good game. I know that North Carolina had their struggles. Preseason number one, they've had their struggles, had some bad losses. So hopefully they can figure it out. But we'll see what happens there. Now, say in the ACC, got Miami pulling away from Clemson 78-74. Nisha Pak had 20 points to lead the way for the Hurricanes. So the Hurricanes kind of quietly, getting up there in the ACC. I think they're like right there. I think this is sort of like knocked them out. Clemson now that top spot in the ACC right now. So those two are kind of like battling out for that number one seed, the regular season title there as well. Western Illinois got a bounce back win, edging out Omaha by 1. So that was a nice little confidence boost there.
Yeah, they lost their last game. Again, I'm talking about Western Illinois getting blown out there. We talked about it on our last show, but nice win for those guys there at Western. Staying locally, Lakina, I did have a chance to watch some of this game actually this morning, getting prep for the show. Southern Illinois beat Missouri State 73-53 down there at Carbondale. Lance Jones had 18 points to lead the way for SIU. Even though SIU shot 28% from three-point range, they dominated the ball inside against that 2-3 zone of the Missouri Bears, and they were more aggressive in the first half, and they pulled away in the second half. And I believe now it's a four-way tie for first place in the Missouri Valley. So we talked about them. They had a bad loss last week. I'm talking about SIU. They had a huge win yesterday to keep pace.
And they did, and they needed that too. Like you said, there's like a like a log jam that for that top seed, and of course,
Drake and Bradley.
Yeah. So there's definitely going to be like a battle there for that. You want to finish in the top 4 to get that double bye now. So the way the format is, so we'll see if they can keep it up. I think they can do it, but it's going to be tough though. That's usually is in the Missouri Valley, so it's going to be interesting there.
Real quickly, our good buddy Lamont checks in via Facebook. He said, do you guys feel seeing people coaching that you watch playing in college?
Yes.
In college, I do. Yes. So do we.
Yes. Because I remember when John Shire won the boys high school title in AA. So when he was in high school. So I think it was Glenbrook North or South. I think it was something like that. But it is a little bit weird seeing him coaching at Duke now, which is a little bit weird. Going to the Pac-12 here, USC beat Washington 80-74, and Oregon beats Arizona State 75-70.
Yeah, Oregon's still one of those outside teams looking in, right, Lakina? Or are they the last 4 out? Because I know
it depends on the bracketology you look at.
Okay.
It depends on the bracketology because I've seen some where they. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just say I know running that Pac-12 is UCLA and USC, and of course Arizona's right there too. So I feel just those 3 teams you could probably get into the NCAA tournament right now, but maybe they can sneak another 2 teams in, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's all going to be like the resume at this point. Now, speaking of resumes, of course, Michigan beat Ohio State 77-69. Hunter Dickinson had 26 points, which is a season high for him. And I saw a little bit of this game. Chris Holtman for Ohio State. I've seen a lot of people say that maybe he should be gone. They underachieved in his tenure, so I don't know. Maybe I'm sure they can figure it out. They got too many great players to figure it out. So hopefully they can do that. Houston got their revenge against Temple. Boy, did they 81-65. They were not very happy. I remember after that game, Tracy Walker had 23 points leading the way, and I think they were not pleased that Temple beat Houston, at home. So they got their revenge by beating them in their house. So right there.
Yeah, you mentioned a big win for Michigan over Ohio State yesterday, 77-69. Hunter Dickinson, one of the best big men in the country, led the Wolverines with 26 points. Juwan Howard's crew is now 13-10, while Ohio State is 11-12. 2 very underachieving teams. I think the worst is Ohio State because they're 1 game under 500.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty bad. So that's not going to help if you're trying to get that resume going in the big, for any kind of tournament, if you will. Now, Northwestern got a nice win. They actually have swept the season series against Wisconsin. They edged them out 54-52. Bluey, that's I'm not making that name up. That's actually how he says his name. 13 points leading the way for Northwestern. Kind of a defensive struggle there, kind of like first to 60. Of course, neither one of them got to 60. So sweeping Wisconsin, I think that definitely helps Northwestern with their tourney resume. So we'll see what happens there as we get closer and closer to tourney time.
Yeah, I don't know what the rest of Northwestern schedule is, Lakina, but I know we talked about it on Friday. But they need to beat a couple more big teams that are ahead of them. I don't think they face Illinois one more time to pull up the schedule. But I know they got a couple of tough games coming up we'll get to in just a moment. But they need a couple more wins before the Big Ten tournament, so it won't be as much pressure on them. And I think they'll be fine. But this is not the same Northwestern team than it was a few years ago when they barely made it to the NCAA tournament, even though they almost lost that too, even though it was a bunch of group of different kids back then.
Yeah, totally. So we'll see if Chris Collins can lead his guys back to the dance. We'll talk about that in a second. But going into this week's games, of course, tonight you got Duke and Miami. This is their first. It's actually going to be their second meeting. So I believe Duke I think Miami beat Duke at Cameron Indoor a couple weeks ago. I'll double check that. But yeah, they face each other at 6:00 on ESPN. That should be a fun one like it usually is. Kansas hoping to bounce back. Well, they're going to have a tough one. They got to face number 5 Texas on ESPN. That's the second game of that big Monday doubleheader.
Okay, going to Tuesday's games, we'll have number 10 Marquette visiting number 21 UConn. That's on FS 1. That's at 5:30 p.m. Chicago time. Number 24 Rutgers will visit Bloomington to take on the number 18 ranked Indiana Hoosiers. That's at 5:30 on Big Ten Network. Let's see here. Going down to a couple big games. I know that Illinois will host Minnesota on Tuesday. That's at 7:30 on Big Ten Network. Of course, Minnesota stinks at 7:15. Illinois at 16-7. Illinois should have no problem beating Minnesota. The game's at home. You should have beaten Iowa on the road last Saturday. So this will be a good tune-up game for the Illini to get that bad taste out of their mouths.
As long as they don't get caught looking ahead, I think they'll be okay. Now, I want to go back to that Miami. Duke actually beat Miami at Carrier Indoors, so I'm sure Miami's going to want their revenge tonight. And the good one here in the ACC, on the ACC Network, you got number 22 NC State. They're been kind of quietly, they've beaten North Carolina, they've beaten Duke, so they'll try to get a go at it against Virginia at 8 o'clock on the ACC Network. And a good one here on ESPNU at the same time. TCU and K-State, that should be a fun one. Maryland and Michigan State, this could be an elimination game. Well, not elimination per se, but this could be like, for bubble purposes, if you will. So that game is at 8 o'clock. Also, too, you got South Carolina and the Fighting Mike Burmans, as we call them here on the show, as they
the Tigers.
Yes, 8 o'clock on the SEC Network. Kentucky hosts Arkansas. That should be a fun one at 8 o'clock on ESPN, and a late one here at 9:30 on FS1 tomorrow. New Mexico hoping to get their revenge against Nevada. They host them in Albuquerque at the Pit at 9:30 on FS1.
All right, let's go to Wednesday's schedule in the world of college basketball. At 5:30 on FS1, we'll have number 23 Creighton. The Blue Jays will pay a visit to Seton Hall. Also at 5:30, Nebraska and Michigan at Chrysler Arena. Of course, Michigan, as we mentioned, they're 13-10. They should have no problem with the Nebraska Juwan Howard crew there. At 6 o'clock on ESPN2, we'll have number 11 Iowa State. They'll visit West Virginia, the Mountaineers in Morgantown. Also to another key game here in the Missouri Valley Conference at 6 o'clock on Wednesday on ESPN+. We'll have Belmont visiting Missouri State. Of course, Missouri State lost at SIU in Carbondale yesterday by 20.
That should be a fun one. That could be a fight for that top 4 spot, because Belmont's right outside that top tier. They're kind of like right in the middle. So this should be a big one here for rankings if necessary. Syracuse and Florida State at 6 o'clock on ESPNU. I know Jim Boeheim's been getting in some trouble with some comments he made. We won't rehash that, but we'll have the time. But Google them if you still choose to. But yeah, that's at 6 o'clock on ESPNU. Vodtech home to avoid the letdown against Boston College. I know there are a couple of Pac-12 games here. Tipple meets SMU at 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Georgetown faces Providence. Providence is back in the top 25 at 7 o'clock on CBS Sports Network, I should say. Tulsa meets Houston at 7 o'clock. They're still number 2. DePaul meets Villanova. Wisconsin meets Penn State. That'll be on FS1 and Big Ten Network, respectively.
Yep, and 2 big games on ESPN Plus, both at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. We'll have Bradley visiting Illinois State. Bradley's in the mix for that top spot in Missouri Valley. And UIC, shout out Jonathan Hood, the radio voice, TV voice there. UIC will visit Southern Illinois on Wednesday, also at 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. So big games in the Missouri Valley. Hope we can get more than just the Illini in Northwestern to represent the state of Illinois in this year's tournament.
It'll be very hard for both those teams. Number 20 in the Mountain West, you got number 25 San Diego State against Utah State. That's at 9 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. That should be a fun one. And UNLV and Wyoming at 9:30 on FS1. And I think there are a couple of games, especially in the Pac-12 for Thursday as that comes up. You got the Big Ten will start, Iowa and Purdue. That should be a fun one on ESPN2 at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, for Thursday. Yep. And also, too, let's take a look at it here. Kansas City will visit Western Illinois at 6 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Western Illinois at 15-9. Hopefully they can continue their winning streak. And also, too, on Thursday, as we go through the schedule here at 7 o'clock on FS1, Northwestern will visit Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. I see Northwestern, as we said before, they had to build on their resume to avoid being the first 4 out. And a couple of late games here. If I can go down the scroll on Pac-12 Network at 8 o'clock on Thursday, we'll have number 7 UCLA visiting Oregon State.
That should be a fun one. USC faces Oregon on ESPN2 at 10 o'clock. Let's see. Oh, and St. Mary's will try to avoid the letdown against Loyola Marymount. Remember, Loyola Marymount has beaten Gonzaga in their home floor. So, if you're St. Mary's, you better hope you avoid that letdown there. And yeah, that's about it. That is your schedule for some of the top games this week in college hoops.
We have officially taken a timeout, and we'll be back right after these messages as you're listening to Second City Sports, the Monday edition, live in living color on Sports Zone Chicago. Well, did you watch the Pro Bowl and or the NHL All-Star games over the weekend? We'll give you our Cisco and Eber review of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens 30 for 30 doc, and we'll definitely have Old School TV Monday as we celebrate Black History Month. You're definitely going to love this iconic show that we're going to salute today. So get your takes ready, get your questions ready, get your best memories ready, and all the fun, good stuff. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks? They can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG. And Sid, we actually No, go ahead, Sid.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say we have less than a half hour left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. So get your questions and comments ready, especially when we do Old School TV Monday Saluting Black History Month. Just go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you.
Just want to get a couple of breaking news here and get these out the way. Tom Brady, of course, he did not post another photo of him in his underwear, although I have no problem. I have no qualms about that. But, hello, Thirst Trap. Call me Tom when you are ready to date. But he did tell Colin Cowherd about an hour ago that he won't start his broadcasting career with Fox until 2024. So not this coming season, but next season, but apparently the season after next. So, of course, you heard that the man for himself says, so the clips are out there. So make sure you guys check that out.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks like, Brady will not start his broadcasting career till 2024.
Oh, you actually talked to Colin Cowherd? That's the case, and that's a breaking news in itself.
Yeah, he actually did. He actually made his appearance early, just about an hour ago. So go back and watch the clips. The clips are on YouTube. I'm sure it's on the internet. So just check those out. Also, AJ Green, former All-Pro wide receiver, of course. He's been the last about 4 years with the Cardinals. Has announced his retirement. So he's on his way to the next chapter.
Yep. So congratulations to AJ Green on a great career. I know he was hanging on there in the last couple of years with the Arizona Cardinals. He was very good, of course, during the last decade. He was replacing Chad Ochocinco as the top wide receiver with Cincinnati. Him and Andy Dalton were one of the best underrated combinations, QB wide receiver combinations in the NFL during the last decade. Will he have the numbers to go in the Hall of Fame? I don't know. I'll have to look at him much more deeper, but he's on the borderline at best for the Hall of Fame for me.
Yeah, I think he's kind of right there, borderline. He might be one of those Hall of very good wide receivers because there's such a log jam of wide receivers. So I think, I think if he does make it, he'll have to probably wait a few years. I think he's not a first ballot, but we'll talk more about it with our girl Christine coming up on Friday. Christine Manica, of course, from KXRB, coming up on Friday, and I guess going back to Brady first, he said he wants to kind of do the prep work. So I guess he's gonna be doing a lot of simulated games, this next season to kind of get himself prepared and ready. So maybe that's a smart thing by him, but we'll see.
Yeah, as we talked about with our guy Randy Cross the last hour, he said it wasn't that hard of a transition for him, even though it was many years ago. But as we said before, I think we talked about it with Christine last Friday on the show. With all these players getting these radio gigs and these TV gigs, these networks will test you out heavily to see if you can fit, and you have to have a natural charisma to relate to your audience, communicate your message thoroughly to the audience. So, and you have to have that it factor. Not everyone has it. Can you learn the job and become great at it? Sure, but some people have the it factor, some don't. But we'll see what happens with Brady.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, like I said, I think the practice. I think using this season, next season to practice. I think that's probably will help him. I'm sure he's going to be doing a lot of simulating. I hope they do a 3-man booth with him and Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen. I don't want Greg Olsen demoted or put out to pasture just to make Brady. I want that. I know some people about a 3-man booth, but I think if you get the right three guys, you can make it work.
It's not like we haven't seen it before, especially in the NFL. We've seen it plenty of times. Remember when Joe Buck started calling football games after Pat Summerall and John Madden both moved on 20 years ago? It was him, Chris Collinsworth, and Troy Aikman. Remember that? Yep. Remember when Troy Aikman started out with Fox? It was him, Dick Stockton, and Daryl Moose Johnson.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
So we've seen that before. Remember, and we'll get to the documentary in just a moment. But the late Tony Siragusa, it was him, Kenny Albert, and Moose Johnson when Moose Johnson was paired up with Kenny Albert. So we've seen the 3-man boost before. You just gotta have the right combination.
Absolutely, and yes, Brandon, we already did the NBA, so you got to go back and listen to the rebroadcast of it here on YouTube. So, we just make sure you check that out. We did do the NBA already, so but yeah, we're gonna wait and see there now. So we'll just see. We'll talk more about all this stuff with both Brady and AJ Green with our girl Christine, coming up on Friday. But I think our buddy Lamont has some news. Did y'all hear the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Las Vegas conspiracy theory? I mean, he's already, Devontae Adams kind of already put it out there that he is coming here. So I don't know. I mean, I guess at the Pro Bowl, I know, of course, we talked about with Randy earlier. He was over there winning a pro-am tournament at Pebbles. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of over the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Like, if you want to retire, fine. If you want to play in Las Vegas, fine. You want to go back to San Francisco where you're from, fine. I don't care. I don't care. Like, I don't care. Just whatever. Do what you want.
On that note, Lakina, did you check out any of the action of these Pro All-Star games from over the weekend, the NHL All-Star game and or the Pro Bowl games? Now, I did not watch a single minute of the NHL All-Star game. I told you last week I haven't watched it since when they went to the shutdown this season, back in the 04-05 season. I haven't watched an NHL All-Star game since, but I only saw 5 minutes of the Pro Bowl last night. And I think the NFL is going to keep the format this way because you could tell those players were having a good time. They weren't wearing any pants. They were just wearing their Pro Bowl jerseys and shorts and gym shoes, and they were running around like they were 10-year-olds. And so it was a two-hand tag football. I know Peyton Manning was coaching the AFC. His brother Eli was coaching the NFC. And something weird, interesting happened. I'm assuming this was a comedy moment, but Kirk Cousins taking a knee in flag football. What's going on with that? I hope it was just a comedy moment.
Yeah, I don't think you could do that on flag football. I know you could take a couple of knees, like I guess, I don't know, but I guess there was some stuff that happened, and I guess they got a crew from the Pac-12, which is a big mistake right there, but that's a whole different thing. But I mean, it was sort of weird to watch. It went on longer than it should have. I'll talk about the tag stuff, but look, I think that they're gonna keep the format. I feel like because like you said, you could tell that all those guys were having fun. I know Josh Jacobs was not happy that. I think he was just pissed that it's not in Hawaii. I think if you were in Hawaii, I think he probably would have been okay. Playing these games, but but yeah, I mean, it's just like, they're gonna keep the format. You can tell everyone was having fun. I don't know about the Rays. We'll probably get the Rays probably later on today or into tomorrow. But this is gonna be around for a little bit. I know some of our favorites on Twitter, Dave Kerner from WBBN Radio, and I know our girl Deion Miller as well from ABC 7 Chicago. They're kind of going back and forth on, look, but you can only see so much flag football. But I'm like, I would say, well, guys, we're going to be seeing this for a little bit. We've been seeing it for the last few weeks in the Pro Bowl, but they're actually playing in pads. So, like, why should this be any different? But
and shout out to our buddy Lamont Scott, who posted his comment on the Facebook page. The Pro Bowl was cool in the skills competitions. Yeah, those skills competitions was actually a little bit better than the actual game yesterday. Not that the actual game was horrible. Like I said, I only watched 5 minutes of it. But we talked about it before, Lakina. Remember, growing up, we would watch the quarterback skills challenge. They had every top quarterback in the league. They did it for like the 15, 20 years, and then it went away. And so I'm glad to see new competition skills being introduced as well. So I know they try to extend it to a whole weekend like the NBA. I don't know if they're going to succeed in that. We shall see, because we're in the first year. They completed the first year of this experiment. But the actual game, the way they formatted yesterday, is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, so for those of you who are hoping, well, what's the alternative? I mean, they're going to be doing this or not. So
exactly.
So sorry, folks, who've been wanting. You kind of like, you weren't watching with the regular format, so you might as well do it with a different format. So it's a little bit crazy here, but going into the, I watched a little bit of the NHL All-Star game. Our buddy Seth Jones from the Blackhawks actually did pretty well. Didn't do too well in the skills competition, like in the first beat, but actually scored a goal, in the further central. Of course, unfortunately, they ended up losing. But probably my favorite moment was probably the moment between Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin and his little son Sergei. You already tell that he's going to end up. He's going to be doing it like his dad, because like the way he was skating, he could have been more like 4 or 5 years old now, and he had a nice little a little breakaway goal there. So it was actually really cool. So that was probably my favorite part of the NHL All-Star game weekend. It's All-Star weekend, I mean.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't watch a minute of it, but I know that Alex Ovechkin, we talked about Lamont's comment earlier about you watching college athletes playing now that you see them coaching. Looking at Alexander Ovechkin, he has a few gray hairs now, so
Yes,
he's been
he does.
at this for a long time, and so and it got me to thinking how much longer we're going to see Patrick Kane have a few gray hairs, because he's up in his almost mid-30s now, and so
Right.
it's not going to be too long. We'll see him have those few gray hairs around the corner.
Well, yeah, no, Taves. I know Taves. I think he's had like a couple of gray hairs too. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, but it makes you feel old though. But yeah, look, I think the fact that they're still doing this, as for all these years, especially Ovechkin, still playing at a high level too. So you got to give him props for that.
Yep, and we'll see what happens as the second half of the season starts in a couple of days for the NHL and the Blackhawks. All right, Lakina, before we get to Old School TV Monday, our Black History Month edition, what did you think about the Baltimore Ravens from 2000 Super Bowl championship 30 for 30 doc that aired last night? For those of you that didn't get a chance to watch it, it's going to air throughout the week on ESPN and ESPN2. But if you want to watch it right now, if you have ESPN Plus, it's streaming there right now, commercial free. Lakina, what were your thoughts about the documentary last night?
I like the way they did. I mean, this was actually filmed about a month before. Of course, sadly, Tony Siragusa, I should say, passed away about a month after that was filmed. So I'm glad they were able to kind of you don't predict these type of things, but I'm glad that they did it. But they share some great stories, and I didn't know that Coach Billick was Brian Billick, I should say, of course, who coached those Ravens teams in the late 90s, early 2000s, was so very eccentric,
Yeah.
Of course, Shannon Sharp, called him a cocky SOB. He called him way back when, and there was this great rivalry between the Ravens and the Titans, the Tennessee Titans, that were led by God rest his soul, the late great Steve McNair, Eddie George, among others. There was a little bit like back and forth between those two. Those two had a little bit of a rivalry for those first couple years in the new century. But look, I feel like this team doesn't get their due, because they averaged about, I think they shot people scoreless. So it was very interesting, very cool, and how sharing some of the stories and such. Of course, Ray Lewis. They did mention what happened in that Pro Bowl prior to that Super Bowl season. So I'm glad they talked about that. Of course, Trent Dilfer, they made the change mid-season, about like 5 games into the season. Remember Tony Banks was the starter, because they had just drafted him a couple of years earlier from Michigan State. He wasn't playing very well, and they said, look, we need a guy that's gonna kind of fit into what we're trying to do here with the defense. So they brought Trent Dilfer, and the rest was history.
Yep, and our buddy Lamont Scott comments on our Facebook page. He says that it was a great documentary. That team reminds him of the Tampa Bay team that won it with Sapp and company. Yeah, remember with the Tampa Bay team, they got John Gruden to get them over the top after getting rid of Tony Dungy because of the lack of offense. But that documentary was 2 thumbs up for me last night. Like you said, they paid homage to Tony Siragusa to open up the show and to close the show as well. They had some big personalities on that club. If you follow football, follow sports like we do, you knew about some of those personalities like Tony Siragusa. Remember, he was with the Indianapolis Colts before then. And Shannon Sharp, of course, winning those 2 Super Bowls with Denver. But it was a couple of interesting stories that I'm not going to say taken aback. It was a couple that I didn't know. One, Tony Siragusa said that before joining Baltimore, he paid a visit to the late Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders at the time, offered them a contract, and they lowballed him by $50,000. And Tony Siragusa said you could take it and shove it. And then after Baltimore beat Oakland in that championship game where he injured quarterback Rich Gannon. Remember, Rich Gannon, this is before Oakland made the Super Bowl a couple years later. Remember, Rich Gannon at that time, he was hopping around for a couple of teams, and then he finally started to turn it around under head coach John Gruden in Oakland. Siragusa injured Gannon in that second quarter, and that's what opened that game up, along with that 99 touchdown pass and run by Shannon Sharp. And Siragusa had some words for Phil Simms when he was being interviewed by him for the Super Bowl. He said, you can go take that $10,000 and shove. I'm just paraphrasing, and shove it, because he was fined $10,000 for that hit. Of course, Phil Simms made a comment during that broadcast on CBS that he thought it was a dirty hit. And so Siragusa was a great personality. I'm glad, like I said, you can't predict things like this happen in terms of death or anything like that. But I'm glad they got him to do it on that stage. And, of course, they showed a lot of the film from the following year when they were featured on Hard Knocks on HBO. very first Hard Knocks, which I still believe that's the best one in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
because the NFL caught the Baltimore Ravens at the right time because they're like you said before, Lakina, with our before, and you said it with our Randy Cross that that'll probably be the last greatest defense that we'll ever see. They held their opponents to 10.3 points, 3 points per game. They had, I believe, 4 shutouts throughout the regular season. And I say any team that could compare to them defensively, well, of course, was the 85 Bears. I don't know what was their points, their opponents per average was from that year, but that Baltimore team was physical. They were offensively challenged, as you saw during the month of October. Even though they won 2 games, they did not score a touchdown for a whole month. And to say that in today's NFL would be blasphemy, pardon my Stephen A. Smith. But that team went through a lot both on and off the field. And I remember this story, and I'm glad they told it on the documentary last night. I remember when they beat Tennessee in the middle of that season back in November, and Trent Dilfer actually brought this up during their conversation with Kevin Byrne, the Ravens PR guy who hosted the thing. He said that at the time, and this story was told on America's Game, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens for the NFL Network. Go find it here on YouTube. But Trent Dilfer said that he lost his playbook, and and they found out that someone from
Greg
the Titans
Williams
had stole it, and then he said that Greg Williams told them
at the time.
Yeah, for the Titans, they told him during an event a decade ago that we stole your playbook. And Trent Dilfer was like, "Things I already knew that."
But yeah, they already knew what was going on. Of course, they still lost to them, so that's kind of like pretty cool how that works. I think Coach Billick was the perfect guy to coach that team. He was definitely very similar to the personalities of those guys, and of course, unfortunately, Dilfer got pushed to the side. They brought on Elvis Gerbach. Didn't really, of course, it didn't really transpire what happened there. Not to say they would have gone back to back had Dilfer had stayed. But it kind of felt like they should have, probably at least tried it for one more year, especially with Hard Knocks. Could they have gotten the Super Bowl, or at least gotten to another appearance? Maybe, but we'll see. And also too, we got Ray Lewis. His favorite movie is Gladiator because they had won the Best Picture Oscar that year. So it was just like it was a great documentary. I like the way they did it. Of course, they did mention, Goose, beforehand. So that was actually a pretty cool moment. You saw. Some stories with Rod Woodson and Shannon Sharp, but what went on kind of like behind the scenes. So it was actually pretty cool how they did. So I definitely give it a solid like B+, A- for that.
Yeah, same here. And remember, we brought up the 3-man crew earlier, Lakina, and if you paid attention, I'm sure you remember this. For those of you in the Chicago area, remember this. Remember on the documentary last night, they showed the Fox 3-man booth between Dick Stockton, Troy Aikman, and Daryl Moose Johnson, who he was starting working at Fox. This was his first year. Remember who Baltimore opened up against in that 2001 season?
I do. I believe it was Dallas.
It was the Bears.
It was the Bears. Yep, it was the Bears. Yep,
it was the Bears. And the Bears, even though they barely lost to Baltimore on the road on opening day, remember the Bears outplayed the Ravens, of course.
Yes, they did.
No one knew at the time, but that game alone would be Minnesota at home next week, that following week before 9/11. That game catapulted the Bears to a surprise 13-3 season. And as you talked about before, Lakina, everybody wondered what was wrong with Elvis Gerbach. He didn't play that much better than Trent Dilfer did the year before. So I thought that was interesting that they showed that clip of the opening clip from that Bears Ravens season opener from 2001. They were talking about Aikman was talking about Gerbach. I was like, everybody thought it was an improvement at the time because Gerbach played for Kansas City and San Francisco.
They went to the playoffs a couple of times.
Yeah, so everybody thought it was an upgrade, but it wasn't. So.
All right, so so a great, of course, ESPN 30 for 30. So if you haven't seen the Bullies of Baltimore, it'll be like I said, it'll be throughout the week. It's already streaming now on ESPN Plus, so you have ESPN Plus. You guys can check that out as well. You listen to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown with you as we wrap things up. Now it's that time, Sid. Time for Old School TV Monday, and of course we're going to switch it up here. Of course, since it's Black History Month, we're going to be doing Black shows and such. So, Sid, take it away. Who is our first show?
All right, let's go hang out at Hillman College's Salute a Different World. That's right. I'm not going to sing the theme song here. A Different World was an American sitcom television series and a spinoff of The Cosby Show that aired for 6 seasons on NBC from September 24th, 1987 to May 8th of 1993. The series originally centered on Denise Huxtable, played by Lisa Bonet, in the life of students at Hillman College, a fictional historically black college in Virginia. It was inspired by student life at historically black colleges and universities. After Bonet's departure in the first season, the remainder of the series primarily focused more on Southern Belle, Really Gilbert Wayne, played by Jasmine Guy, and the math whiz Dwayne Wayne, played by Kadeem Hardison. While it was a spinoff from The Cosby Show, Different World typically addressed issues that were avoided by The Cosby Show writers. In one episode that aired in 1990, one of the first American network television episodes to address the epidemic of HIV and AIDS. We'll get to that episode in just a moment. The original premise was to focus on a white student at a historically black college and feature Lena Horne as an acting teacher. But in production, the premise changed from being a story about a white student in a black college to a black student in a black college with a white friend. It was ultimately decided that Denise, who was a college age, would be spun off and have a white roommate in order to show the dynamic of a white girl in a predominantly black surroundings. Meg Ryan was originally cast for this role, but she decided to pursue a film career, so Marissa Tomei was instead filled her place. The first season of Hillman's student body consisted of both black and white students in equal numbers, but this was changed at the beginning of the second season in a predominantly black student body maintained until the series ended. And of course, Debbie Allen made some sweeping changes before season 2. And of course, we all know why Denise Huxtable was written out of the series, because she was pregnant with a then husband, Lenny Kravitz, the great singer. And she and Bill Cosby had some beef and left the show. So, Lakina, this was a great show that aired for 6 seasons on NBC. I remember as a kid watching it. It was on my mother's television every Thursday. Of course, it was a part of that great Thursday night lineup on NBC. It led off The Cosby Show, led off, followed by Different World, and then it was Cheers. And I believe, Seinfeld came in the 90s, and then, of course, LA Law finished up the night. Lakina, they addressed so many issues, from the LA riots, which kicked off the 6th and final season, the AIDS episode, which we'll get to in just a moment. And they also addressed date rape. I forgot about that episode. And that was Cree Summer, who played Freddie. That was her first season on the show. During that second season, they addressed date rape, and they remember they had the racism episode with Dean Cain before he did Adventures of Superman a couple years later on ABC. So they addressed a whole lot of issues, and it brought a step in life onto television as well. They had a few fraternities and sororities during their dance steps on the show as well. So it was overall a great show to watch. I remember catching some of the earlier episodes. I remember for that one television season in syndication here in Chicago, it aired on WGN, I think around 4:30, 5 o'clock. It was 93, 94. Just after they went off the air, WGN aired their reruns for the entire year. I started to catch up with some of the earlier episodes, but I remember watching the last 3 years when there was new episodes that aired on NBC. It was a great show. It showed the love dynamic between Dwayne Wayne and Jasmine Guy's character Whitley. I thought that was a beautiful love story, the ups and the downs, and that you can keep a relationship together. And both those characters had totally opposite personalities, but they got married, and they both had great careers. And some of the other characters got shine too. So it was a great show. What were some of your favorite memories from that series?
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of jump here for a second now. I wish they would just say that the show was too white that first season. I wish they would just go ahead and just say it. They should just go ahead and say it. I mean, I know Ann Beats, who did, of course, SNL and Square Pegs. Of course, she was the EP and the head writer for that. Of course, I remember Felicia Rashad when she did some appearances. I think just about everybody on the Cosby Show did a appearance on Different World for the first couple of years. I remember she said she went to Bill Cosby and said, "You're not gonna like how the show looks." So that's why, of course, Cosby made the sweeping changes. They brought on, of course, Debbie Allen, of course, Felicia's sister, and of course, the rest was history there. Of course, they got rid of all the weaves and everything else. And of course, like I said, they made a more like a historically black college, I guess, Who knows who knows if the show would not have lasted long if they had kept the original concept. I don't know, but look, I mean, they tackled a lot of issues. They tackled the date, the date rape episode. I remember that episode very vividly, watching it live. Even at 6, that affected me a lot as a kid. Of course, the AIDS episode was another one, of course, with Tisha Campbell. She played the victim, and of course, the still very ignorant concepts of what people thought AIDS was at the time. So I'm glad they did that episode. They couldn't use the word condom. They couldn't show the condom. I remember Don Lewis said that she couldn't even hold the condom. She couldn't even do that. This is 89, mind you. So that's how kind of absurd it was, even way back when. But I mean, the LA episode, the right episode, I think they kind of went a little bit too far in that. I get that they were trying to get, make it, believable and such, but I think you got to pick your battles. And I remember Susan Fales, who was one on the writing staff for, I think, the second season on. So halfway through the first season, going to the second, to the end. I remember her saying that they kind of had to pick their battles with some of those episodes because they had to get approval from the networks. It made sense. Look, like LA Law, it made sense for LA Law and all the LA based shows to talk about it and actually show it. But the fact that they kind of did that, I think that was a little bit too far. Remember that Mamie episode? Remember that was the year
Charnel Brown played Kimberly Reese, the doctor. Yeah.
It was a white guy that wrote that episode.
Yes.
People don't know that. It was a white guy that wrote that episode. And I know there was a little bit some battle there too about how should they have went on and did it. But look, I get it. I mean, look, it was great for what it was, and I think, but for me, and again, this is for me, I think they went a little bit too far in that. People go to sitcoms to kind of escape from a lot of the realities and stuff like that. It's one thing you want to talk about, that's fine. But if you're beating people over the head with it, you're going to turn some folks off. And I think some folks were probably turned off by that. But I'm glad they actually. And look, but it made sense. I mean, the race episode, Dean Cain, I think he was a little bit too convincing in that role. Look at it now, but I'm just saying. I did have a crush on him way back when, but it felt like you a little bit too convincing there, my friend. But but I digress. But but you saw a different side too. I know. Daryl Bell talked about it too. They showed different side. Uri Sabella, who played the state trooper. From Taxi and some of the shows he's done. That was really cool. That moment where he said, "Well, look, I marched with Dr. King. You don't know. You assume, but that I'm like that, but I'm not." So I'm glad they kind of delve into that. So, but I think they went a little bit too much into it. I mean, for me, and I know this is not I want to hear Lamont's thoughts on this, but and yours too. But I felt that the show should have ended when Dwayne and Whitley got married. That was a perfect ending for the show. I'm glad I'm not the only one who feels that way. I thought there was a bad take, but I see people actually agree with me for some folks. So I didn't need to see them go through marriage life. That was a perfect ending. With the exception of Jada Pinkett, of course, a lot of the people that came on after that, they weren't very good. They were kind of dull. So that should have been the end of the show for me. That should have been the ending for us.
I can see your point, but the way that season 5 ended, that was classic. If you saw some of the documentary that TV1 did about a decade ago, Kadeem Hardison said that the ending, they had an alternate ending to that, but he said he kind of ad-libbed that when Willie was about to get married to George Morton's character. He played Byron, the politician. Of course, he begged Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill, baby, please, to have the whole, I marry you, please. And everybody went wild. Now, like you said, if the series would have ended there, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. Of course, we would have had these endless debates on what the show could have been instead of making that hard left turn for that next and last season. When, of course, that season 6 opened up with them on their honeymoon in LA, of course, dealing with the riots. But Lamont says yes, it should have ended then. Yeah, I can see I can see both sides of the issue. So, but overall, it was a great show. It had different personalities from the Black culture, and they had very various guest stars. I won't name them all, but one of my favorite guest stars that was on that show was Patti LaBelle and Diane Carroll, who played the parents of Willie and Dwayne. Of course, you had some music guest stars. I remember Gladys Knight from the second season. Love Overboard, if you remember that. We all 80s babies here, so I remember that. Of course, Heavy D, he was on that show, and he nobody mentions that episode. Of course, In Vogue was in there. Boyz II Men, who did the theme song for the last 3 seasons on that show, was on there. Of course, you had Whoopi Goldberg doing that AIDS episode. James Avery, of course, Uncle Phil. And remember, Carlton was supposed to be a full-time actor on this show. and he did one episode as a prospect freshman.
Yeah, that would have been cool too. They were actually able to kind of work that out and keep. I think that would him and Jada Pinkett, the characters. I'm sure they would have clashed a lot. I think that would have been a nice little storyline for them. And
Yeah.
remember Blair Underwood, on Break from LA Law, he did that famous episode where, of course, he played a friend, a high school friend of Dwayne's, and he had signed up, for the army, to go because he was gonna. Because the original, the first Gulf War had just started at that point about a month prior to that episode. They've been filming the episode, so he came in and I think that was probably a great acting job by Kadeem when saying have concern from his friend that you could be right there on the front line. So that was a nice episode. And, it kind of delved into that issue too. And look, people have these kind of conversations in college campuses everywhere. So I think that they did a really nice job. Of course, you had the traditions with the fraternities and the sororities. So they made it exactly what an HBCU school, does. I mean, I'm sure it happens in mainstream schools too, but in particularly HBCUs. And I think that, like it's been said before, I know other folks have said it. And I'm wondering though, like you wonder, could the show have lasted long had they kept the original concept? Maybe it would have, but again, it probably would not have been at the quality of it. I still want to know why Don Lewis left after right before that last season. I did not. I gotta say, I did not like that they put her character Jaleesa and Colonel Taylor together.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. That was after that Sinbad left to go do Showtime at the Apollo, and so when they came back that following season, I want to say season 4, and they had Jaleesa and Glenn Turman's character Colonel Taylor married. I was like, that was weird.
Yeah, and that struck me as a case of, well, we can't find anybody else. We're not going to bring in anybody else, so let's just put these two together. Look, no shade to Glenn Turman. He's still working. He's still kicking butt at 70. I think he's like 78 now. You know, of course, Cooley High. Of course, that was his first star-making role. Been working in television theater ever since. Even in between that, but yeah, that was always very weird to me. I think that's probably the reason why she left. She won't. She has never admitted, but I think that was probably part of the reason why she left. I think, but that's a different.
Just to wrap up here, Lamont Scott says the DJ from the rap group who Dino is
the
open of the show with the girl from the Michael Jackson video. I think it's the way you make me feel. I know what you're talking about. Yes, she was in the open. That was shot in one motion. Yes. Their opens were legendary. Just a couple of things from me quickly as we wrap up. Also, one of my other favorite episodes, I think this was from the last season, Lakina. Remember Chris Cross and Jermaine Dupri? Jermaine Dupri did not have a speaking part. He was Chris Cross's producer and DJ. Remember that episode? Dwayne Wade was a mentor to Chris Cross. They played Troubled Youth. Chris Cross called him at the end after their performing It's a Shame, the OT, the original teacher. That was one of my favorite episodes there. And also to give Debbie Allen credit, she had a few members of that cast write some episodes and direct some episodes as well, including Glenn Turman and Dean Hardison, who directed a couple episodes as well.
Yeah, and I think he's still doing. I think he's still directing to a couple of Glenn Turman. Of course, he's still active. Of course, he also and I think Jasmine Guy did a couple episodes too. I think she wrote and directed some episodes as well herself. So, and I know I kind of want to get into the whole thing with the last season, but that actually wasn't a bad episode. I think that was probably one of the best episodes of that last season.
Yeah,
but I kind of feel like Kim and Ron, they should have been the end game. I like Ron and Freddie, but I kind of felt like Kim, accepted Ron for who he was. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I think it depends on how you look at it. Like I love Cree Summer. I think Freddie was great. She kind of evolved and showed a lot of growth. I think all the characters, even Ron, showed some growth.
Yes.
In the end, but which is what you want for any kind of character in a television show. But yeah, I think although I did like the fact that they did have Kim go with a very nice guy. I like Spencer a lot. I think I saw the actor recently one of the Tyler Perry shows. But yeah, I mean, I think look. Grownish is probably like the closest thing, that's probably, with Yara Shahidi. Of course, she played Anthony Anderson, Tracy Ellis Ross's oldest on Blackish. Grownish is, some people say that's probably like the closest thing to a different world, type. So kind of like the same, kind of concept. I think they're about to start their 5th season, I think, on Freeform in a little bit. But yeah, I know that people want to do a remake. I mean, I think a show that could work now. But again, you probably have to do a lot of maybe streaming might be a better spot for them, I think. But what can I say?
Yeah, Lamont says that Freddie, as a lawyer, was beautiful, so he had a crush on Freddie. Yeah, and speaking of Freddie, her boyfriend for the last couple of seasons, Shazar, this is before he went to the CSI TV franchise on CBS, so his star was
Gary
starting to rise
Dourdan.
after he left that show.
Yeah, Gary Dourdan. Yes, yeah.
Yes,
People forget that.
yes.
People forget that. So yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't forget. Yeah, I remember that him with the dreads and stuff, the long dreads he had.
Yeah, so I think Charlamagne the God said on that Breakfast Club interview we talked about before, Lakina. You can look it up on YouTube when Jasmine Guy, Kadeem Harrison appeared on that show back in September. Charlamagne the God put it perfectly. He was one of the original woke brothers.
Yeah, probably so. But I mean, look, I mean, I remember Jasmine's comments real quick before we wrap up here. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing with the last season where I think Different World was competing against Martin. I think I know Jasmine Guy was not very happy with that switch, but yeah, I think people need to remember those were two different audiences. Martin was more like for the grown audience.
Yes.
A Different World was more for like the young adult, like late teen, early 20 audience. I feel like so. I think for her to say that, I think that was not a good take by her. I just think that the show kind of just showed its age. I think people, for me, I stopped watching after halfway through the last season. It didn't really interest me anymore.
Yeah. So we salute the NBC TV sitcom for Black History Month here on Second City Sports, A Different World. All right, real quickly again before we head out, which was the best version of the Different World theme song? Aretha Franklin's version or Boyz II Men's?
I like both versions, but yeah, but I think Boyz II Men I think was really good because he had a little bit of acapella like before and afterwards. So I think that was probably like no shade to Aretha Franklin because Aretha, she's Aretha, but I felt like Boyz II Men's version I think was really good. So I'm glad they changed it up after that last couple of seasons.
All right, I like like I said, I like the Boyz II Men version too, but I'm taking Aretha's. Hers was a little bit more jazzy. Of course, Lamont Scott agrees with me. He says Aretha's version of the song. All right, Lakina.
Yeah, I love Joe Morton on that show. I'm so glad that he's finally getting his flowers. Finally,
Yeah.
I mean, he was working even before and even after that show, after his stint on that show. So I'm glad that he's still finally getting his due. So yay!
All right, take us home.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan McGee on the IG.
You can follow your Shirley Sydney Brown on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. We'd like to thank Mr. Randy Cross from CBS Sports Network for joining us today, breaking down the Super Bowl, the preview, NFL, and Bears, and much more. You can find Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please download the Sports Zone Chicago app today. You can subscribe to our podcast at War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And don't forget that Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. So celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV.
Anywhere you want, you can catch our show. Sean and Maya.
Happy birthday, Maya!
Happy birthday, Maya! Happy 25th birthday, Maya! Well,
yes.
And also too, of course, what's up, cuz I'm sure they're gonna have a lot of great stuff to talk about. With Super Bowl 57, among other things, coming up as well. So catch their show tonight at 6.
Yes. So don't forget to catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday and Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as you kids would say. Catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, so enjoy the weather. It's a little bit better outside, a little more seasonal for this time of year. So enjoy all the college hoops you got coming up. I know you guys, all of you are going to be geared up for the Super Bowl. Hopefully, we'll have some more great guest talk to preview the Super Bowl. But of course, our girl Christine Manica will be joining us as well from KXRB for our usual spot on Friday. But of course, hopefully, we'll have some other great folks to talk to preview the Super Bowl as well. So. So for Sid, I'm Lakeem. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Stay safe out there, folks, and we'll see you Friday.
Love, peace, and hair grease. Holla!